Santosh and Gopal. Welcome to the next edition of Fire Up, a series that we have started during the lockdown to just get some very specific aspects, insights on very specific aspects from startups based on their own experiences. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience with Pluspin today. We're going to be talking about how do we get customers excited. I mean, you've had a lot of experience in the last year and a half or two since you've started the journey, dealing with customers, a lot of pilots, a lot of pivots, and
Yes.
So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So before we get started on the topic itself, I want to just take a couple of minutes and just narrate the journey. How did you get the idea, and what's the journey been, and where are you today with the whole startup, especially the product and the way the product came out?
Sure, Ramesh. As all of you know, like we have come to IIIT somewhere towards the end of 2017, and that's pretty much the time frame where Gopal and I also had contemplated of starting something of our own. Both of us actually go back to our college days, and then we're childhood friends. And then during our preparation for MBA and during my stint at ISB, and Gopal spending his time at in New York, and post education, if you see, we have spent some amount of time in the developed nations, which is basically the US, Europe, and all. So one common thing which both of us and during one of the discussions which popped up was basically, have you seen how the pharmacies are operating in these Western countries? I mean, they are no longer, or they are not like there's not something like what we see in India, where these the pharmacies are basically cutting strips and giving medications to people. They're actually helping, and they're helping the entire healthcare ecosystem by becoming one layer over there, by providing drug adherence, by providing patient care, by providing various um, uh, healthcare services, which necessarily does not require a doctor or a trained clinician to be present. So I think that was basically the inception point. And then we did a few months of ground study. We tried to see how the farms in India operate and all. And probably towards the end of 2017 is where we started Pluspin. Again, we had our own share of stories, the way we started to some of the pivots. I will be talking about them as we progress. But from that point of onwards, we have, in the last couple of years of journey, we have now a partnership of more than 500 pharmacies in Hyderabad. We have also gotten into 3 different distinct service lines with this pharmacies, which was as planned. So Pluspin was built with a mindset that we will be basically creating a largest independent network of exclusively for retail pharmacy stores, like unlike the corporate ones or the company operated retail pharmacies. These are basically an aggregation of all the independent retail chemists in and around an area. So we call them as Pluspin healthcare points, and these points are created with an aim to help customers improve their health and wellness awareness. So the Pluspin healthcare points help these consumers to discover various hyperlocal services which are available in and around them, and basically in that same course of action, it helps the customers to save their out-of-pocket expenditure. And when I say these healthcare services, this can start from pretty much everything, whatever happens once a doctor prescribes something. So a customer goes to a doctor writes a prescription, and then the next thing is he lands in the pharmacy. So while fulfilling his prescription, which is the natural tendency for pharmacist because he has been doing it for ages, now this platform is enabling him to avail various other healthcare services which come in the same prescription. The most common one is the diagnostic services. The customer can now actually take the help of the pharmacist to find the most efficient and available nearest available diagnostic center to get this service. They can actually now rent out various medical equipments which for which otherwise they had to struggle in the past. They can actually now know about various new healthcare products, brands which are available in their locality, using the Pluspin AS platform, which is also available in those same pharmacies. So that's in a nutshell about how the Pluspin concept has come up. So from a product perspective, in this course of action, we have released a couple of products. I'll probably first start with the first product, which unfortunately didn't work, but then gave us a lot of insights. The first one, we called it as a Pharmacy Lite. It was a simple tablet-based inventory management system which we had rolled out for the pharmacies. and it was built with an aim that okay, it will be handheld, it will be it can run on a tablet, the pharmacist can operate easily, we will be able to digitize all the pharmacies, and then based on that we'll build other solutions. I'll talk about it probably a little bit later onto that. Afterwards, we also built one more product known as a Plus Pharma. It's basically it's a native application available on Android and web for the retail pharmacies. This application basically sorts of act as a single point of entry for the pharmacist to disperse all these services. The pharmacist can discover various healthcare service providers which are there in and around them using this application. The pharmacist can actually manage his own customers, their profiles. It's kind of the loyalty app. If you see, probably the Apollo can has launched Apollo One card, and so, but the independent pharmacists lack those kind of capabilities. So now Pluspin steps in there by providing these kind of applications through which the retailer is able to build a customer profile over there. They have an option to end-to-end track all the enquiries, all the orders which they are placing through this application. At the same time, this application also helps the pharmacist to set a goal for themselves in a month of improved income. Say, if a pharmacist says that, you know what, I want to probably do X additional revenue this month, we give them a breakup. Okay, if you do this service, let's say like a diagnostic 20 service kind of customers, you'll earn this much. Probably home care services, 10 customers, you'll earn this much. So it's kind of a gamification we have also built into it. So that's
So
the
these are
second product.
upselling. I mean, these are more like upselling. So the pharmacy actually offers
Yes.
this when the patients come for something else.
Exactly. So that is what precisely, if you see that the preamble to entire thing is the pharmacist has been selling medication for ages. Let's say like last 100 years they have been selling only medications. Now this is an opportunity for them to improve their earning by providing these upsell services, and with the social capital they have, I mean with the set of loyal customers they have, we have seen the well-established pharmacies even adding up to 10 to 12% of their net monthly income by upselling these products, which was otherwise difficult for them to get.
And this is probably the future also, an online offline model.
Yes.
Like even the likes of Amazon have started offline stores in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Yes,
Uh,
that's true.
so I think an online offline model is probably the future, especially for countries like us.
Exactly. That's and that too. I would like to highlight upon one point is that what this model entirely basically stands on is the access to the Bharat customer base, right? I mean, pretty much all solutions when we try to go either a complete online way, in that case, it is so we have a touch base with probably the top 15-20% of a population base, and then there are solutions which are traditional offline, which has a lot of logistic overhead or a marketing overhead. So now this is something which is sitting in the sweet spot in the middle layer, where it uses technology and it helps business, or it gives business access to the middle Bharat consumer base, is what I would put it this way.
No, I think it's a very interesting proposition. Now, as you pivoted, right, you got your first
Yes.
set of farmers.
Yes.
The first set of farmers is where you sold them the inventory tracking solution, or
Yeah.
you tried to sell them. How many of them are still with you?
So good thing is that all of them are with us.
Okay, so that
Not
is
using the not using the pharmacy, the inventory
understood. So,
application, but they've switched to the Plus
yeah,
Pharma.
so okay, that was my next question.
Yes.
So since you pitched something else to them,
Yeah.
and then somehow along the way, through some of them or all of them, you discovered something else that is more compelling for them.
Right.
Now, in the transition process, now if they're excited about you, they're going to work with you and give you a lot of ideas, saying, "Look, you can do this, you can do this, this one."
Exactly. Exactly.
Or they can just say, "No, we don't want," and then you kind of probe and understand and pitch. How did this evolve? I mean, were they excited about what you're doing, and did they actually work with you in creating this new solution, or was it more you had to glean it out of them and then go back to them with a new solution?
Right. So Ramesh, if you see again, as we normally study in the classroom, right? How do we do customer segmentation and all? So for this particular case, it was very important that we stick to our the early adopters. Now, the pharmacist was never a tech-friendly guy till now, right? So when we tried to implant technology into his premises, some of them were initially reluctant. For them, we had to provide the additional warm body interaction, hand holding to get them onboarded. But once the inventory solution did not work, we did not detach ourselves from the customers. What we tried to do was we still went ahead. We tried to understand. We tried to speak to them to find out like what is it which is causing them the problem. Then one thing we realized, and pretty much a couple of them who are like a little ahead in the game, they mentioned that, you know what, this product is fine, but then the value for of using this product is probably kind of a long-term gain. I am not sure whether all the pharmacists will wait for a year or two to see the benefit, the tangible benefit of it. That is when we pitch the idea, then, you know what, if we involve probably an upselling option into the same solution, wherein you will be able to upsell products to your consumers and thereby have some tangible benefits coming in immediately. How does it work? And that's the question we ran through each of our existing user base at that point of time. And surprisingly, we had a good number of acceptance level, and then they also were willing to participate in that journey, right? So that's where probably I would say that the excitement factor was coming, because some of the key retailers were feeling that they are part of this journey. I mean, they are part of this product building. It was not something like somebody has come to them with a product saying that install it, these are the 10 steps, you use it. Rather, we went the other way, wherein we started with the basic this thing. Okay, fine, you send me a message, we'll try to do this thing, this is the entire manual operation, then we'll automate it, and then we'll slowly build the solution around it. So when with every release we were rolling out, we were actually happy that the retailers were giving us the feedback. They were telling, you know what, okay, fine, I'm using this one, but then, you know what, some of the times I'm not comfortable writing into this small box. So when there is a signature, can you make it a full screen? So these kind of very basic things which came from the retailers but helped us to build
So
the product.
how many pharmacies wise, how many customers were these initially when you did the pivot from
Yeah,
the inventory management towards this whole upselling?
we had
How
around
many pharmacies were
30
engaged?
retailers. We had around 30 retailers at that point of time who were working with
That's a
us.
good number. So
Yes.
what was the key draw? I know the way I mean, interpersonal relationship is a very important part of that whole aspect of keeping them excited. But what was there something beyond that? I mean, you of course had to be like very considerate, quickly earn their trust, that you will work with them and
Yes.
somehow try and get them the value. Uh, but was there something specific you did to get them, keep them engaged, and keep them kind of interested in working with
Sure. So I think
you?
one of the things we tried to do there was also capture some of the long tail demands which these people have in their product management part. So if in one thing we noticed is that most of these retailers are dealing with thousands of brands, thousands of products which were nearing expiry. Then they were all these things they were doing, and also they had a full logistic list of consumers for whom they would receive an order on phone, then they would dispatch the order. Now, one thing when we mentioned to them was, okay, why don't you probably digitize this customer database and then have provide a sort of a loyalty benefit to the users? That is something which, if you see, none of the existing products which is targeted for a retail pharmacy was doing. So that is where, if you see, it was a long tail demand, not from all the 30 retailers, but then top 8 to 10 of them were actually uh, they were contemplating of building such an application either through third party or whatsoever. That's when we pitched in, and then we tried to understand their pain point of why would they need to do it. And then that's when we realized that it is a customer loyalty which matters a lot to them. So we also stick to that point. So that means we made our goal clear to them, saying that our goal is to increase the loyalty of your customers rather than talking about monetary benefits at all. I think that is where we sort of got into this mode.
So how many, like those 30 again, talking about the first 30,
Yeah,
how many of their end consumers did they manage to get on board? Because that loyalty
yeah,
is a key part of
yes, yes,
this thing to work. Their
right.
consumers also have to be on their apps. How many of them did they manage to get on the app?
So
Roughly.
yeah, so if you see these top retailers, they have anywhere around 1,500 to 2,000 floating consumer base, which are there in their vicinity and all. So I think when we launched it for the first 1 or 2 months, pretty much all of them had on board around 200 of their regular users onto the platform already. And then over a period of time, I think they have almost entered around 60 to 70% of their consumers into this loyalty segment at this point of
So
time.
that's a very impressive number. Very impressive number. So what were the value triggers? Again, the excitement comes from partly from personal relationships and partly from the whole value model. That if you somehow get them to understand there is value that you can create. So what were the value triggers that you kind of either discovered or like knew upfront and pitched to these 30 pharmacies, the first set of pharmacies, that kind of ensured they stay engaged with you?
Sure. So I think one of the core things which we realized when we talked about that this is going to be a B2B2C model, right? Wherein we will use or we will leverage the pharmacist to sell the services to the end consumers, right? So that was the entire preamble to it, right? So when we approached this pharmacist and told that this is going to increase your customer loyalty, which will in turn improve their repeat purchase rate from you, and that is how you're going to compete with the other players. We have shown it to them by sharing data. So, for example, if a pharmacist was handling or maybe was passing on some inquiries to us. Initially, if you see, if they were not able to place an order themselves, they would share the customer details with us. We had a backend team who would go about completing the entire order flow and all. And that's when every month we would share the data with them. You know what, this month you had shared, let's say, like these 100 consumers, you have helped these consumers fulfill their demand. And then we asked them that, okay, we have sent feedback links to those consumers, and then the consumers have shared their feedback back to us. The interesting part was, for most of the consumers, they were actually praising their pharmacist because that was the front ending. When in the feedback, they were not directly mentioning that, through Pluspin I was able to do it. Some of the feedbacks were around, oh, my pharmacist helped me to do this, now this is how I trust and all this. So those elements, when those elements came in the feedbacks and we took it back to the consumer, to the retailer, they were glad to see it. And some of the retailers themselves have also received it directly via the consumers. When the consumers thanked them for providing the service, the consumers complained to them directly. When we, for some certain cases, if we are not able to meet the consumer expectations, they actually talked to the retailer and they complained about it. And that's when we heard back from the retailer. So this, if you see, was a closely engagement driven model which was being built. That's when some of the most of the retailers realized the true potential of it, and then they figured out that if a prescription, which normally they would have sold a medicine worth 400 to 500 rupees, by upselling these services, they were actually making, some of the times they were actually making more money than what they would have made in selling the medicine alone. And to top it up, they were also gaining the customer loyalty. I think this entire thing, when we tried to package and showcase it in a data-driven manner, and with our relationship managers approaching the retailers, that's where I think this bond solidified.
So that's again another interesting point that you mentioned, the whole data driven. See, in terms of if they have to see value, of course, the bottom line is the most tangible value. If they see their revenue increase, then nothing speaks like that. But it may take some time for the bottom line increase to happen. So in
Yes.
the meantime, the data is the way to show, look, it is heading there. You've
Yes.
got 60% of your users on board. Like, I mean, look, they are now beginning to order medicines like regularly, and their order value has increased a little bit. Now you can upsell to them. These are the loyal ones. So I think the data is very important. It's a good point that you mentioned, making sure that these reports are there, because it's very nice that the customers don't even see you.
That's true.
See,
That's true.
see the pharmacy, because that is your pharmacy is a B2B2C model. So it's important that the pharmacy understands that the customers appreciate the pharmacy.
Exactly. Exactly. And one thing I would like to add, Ramesh, here, if you say, is that in the entire branding effort, while we were doing all these things, right? Any kind of a branding material or element we would put into these retail stores, every content was prepared in a way wherein the service was given by the pharmacist. Nowhere we are mentioning that, Pluspin provides diagnostic services at home, Pluspin provides home care. It was pretty much Ankur Medical now brings to you diagnostic services at your doorstep. All these things, and the bottom would be technology powered by Pluspin. I think that is also one of the elements which was giving our consumers, who are basically the retailers, the trust element that, okay, these guys are not here to steal my customers and then probably do business with them, but they are here to help us improve my business. So I think
I think
that also one of the
I think that's an extremely important factor in getting them, keeping them excited to work with you. That
exact
they should see that there's value for them.
value, and I'm more of a trust part of it. And now, if you see, for any B2B2C model to work, if there is a way for the first party to get access to the end consumer, then there's always a trust element which has to be there in the with the middle layer and the platform provider. Otherwise, because the entire business model hinges on the fact that whether my customer is selling it to his customer with confidence or not. So building that confidence was a bigger factor.
True, true. I mean, that's an important factor, not easy at all. That is not easy at
Exactly.
all.
Exactly.
But then, like I think, but from what you mentioned, looks like one way to kind of very consciously do it is to try and pack that value for the retailer. If you
Exactly.
in the middle B2B to C, the B in the middle, if you can make sure that looking at from their standpoint, they see value, and you proactively pack that value is one way to earn the trust. So when they see
Right.
that working towards their own furtherment as well.
Right.
So some good way to earn the trust. It's a very
Right.
interesting point. So Gopal, why don't you talk about, like, since we haven't discussed it, how did you leverage technology to keep the customer excited? We didn't discuss that, so maybe you can just touch upon that. Not that they need to understand the technology, but how do you
Yeah.
leverage technology to keep the customer excited and engaged with you?
Yeah, so I think one thing what we did as a mistake with at least the inventory solution was that we built technology as we wanted. So that's where we learned from that, building any kind of technology piece which you are giving to the other side of the platform to utilize it, could or could not use it based on various reasons. It may not be that they're tech savvy, maybe they are running out of time. It's just that people are changing out there. So there'll be so many reasons where technology can never, kind of bridge in. But what we felt was that our entire technology piece would be built on around the instant gratification piece. So the prime thing which always kept the retailer excited was about the instant gratification. Like few areas which Santosh touched upon, like making revenue. So our weekly payments and monthly, we even switched to weekly incentivizing them and their pharmacy, basically boys, etc., who are participating in using the app and etc. So incentivizing them on a very regular basis using technology help them to keep their motivation up. Incentivize using the instant gratification as a word in terms of giving the ability to reach to their customers while sending out message or getting notification, where they basically are able to be in constant touch, and that made them happy always. So either it made money, or I kind of took a customer request, or I did something. So that overall went to a particular part, that how do we basically engage them every moment. It could be a very simple feature. It could be a single button that submits a request. It may not be complicated of any tech architecture that's lying behind. But how do we basically make the user engaged over our particular product? So that's
So
where our
did that help, Gopal? I mean, in the process, because I can just kind of visualize some of them getting quite excited about the fact that they're used to just using mobile apps that others have built. Now
yeah.
here they're part of the process of creating an app, and they're asking for things, and they're actually seeing it happen. So did that trigger any excitement in them?
Yeah. I mean, there were times like people were checking every day if their money or the incentivized wherever when you're running incentives they were coming or not. They would chase after RM saying that I didn't receive my money. What has happened? Then we would basically tell them that okay, it's a weekly payout check every Monday. So they would come. You would see a big spike on Monday that every evening everybody would come in and like to see that the transactions that they did they receive money or not. So that's where we saw that yeah, they were getting glued to it. They wanted to see like their efforts translating. That's one part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to the fact that important, like this we didn't touch upon, apart from the pharmacy owners who utilize the app, we also did a sub level division of the app where the pharmacy boys can also participate in it basically.
Mm-hmm.
So now what the pharmacy owner did is that when he was not available, he would basically, kind of ask the boy to download the app, and there was a sub-agent section by which he would get in, and he would do all the same features. And he was getting extra incentivized for doing those, because otherwise the boy had no other, kind of, trigger to do those transactions, because he's just working
Mm-hmm.
for a salary. Why would he, kind of take a customer request and do anything? Because that's what his owner is making money. He's not making money. But
Mm-hmm.
when we added this factor and they said that, oh, it's good. Like I can tell my 4 boys right now to install it. If I'm not there, they're going to run after it. I mean, there's no
Mm-hmm.
problem. So that's where we basically took every request by understanding is that what would work and what would not work more from a behavioral aspect rather than a technology aspect.
So talking about work and not work, I mean, one downside or the flip side of getting the customer excited and very very participating is like they might be making demands that is not possible to realize. So did you get any wild and wacky feature requests that was not possible at all?
Yeah, I mean, we had certain, customers little bit, wacky about like, what about, my customer data might be visible to somebody else. How do you ensure that, these data is only visible to me, nobody else can look at it? So we took some, it little bit took a hard time to make them understand the technology behind it, that nobody else can see it. It's all your
Uh,
data. and it is all secured, but it was a little tough. They wanted something like make it all, offline. Don't make it online. That's what they wanted, a security measure from. And then we had to, slowly help them understand that, these are the data that we take care, security, which nobody else can look into it. That was a slow transition phase. Yes, we probably couldn't convince all the 100%. There were 5 to 10% drops who were like really ardent about the fact that I want to be offline. Nobody sees my customer data, etc. So those were like 5% of the people in the very initial stage. But later, I think people have understood when they use a lot of solutions. They understood that, yeah, my data is secure. And then over a period of time, they build the trust that, yes, this is not going anywhere. And this guy, I'm seeing my data only, nobody else. Yeah.
No, that's nice. So, I mean, now to conclude, Santosh, if you have to give a growth hack to any other B2B, B2B2C startup, or anybody, especially B2B or B2B2C startups, if you can give a growth hack, what would your one tip be in terms of like around exciting the customers and keeping the customers excited? What would one growth hack tip be that you would give other startups from your experiences?
Sure. I think the topmost thing, Ramesh, I would say is that understanding the DNA of customers is more is the topmost thing, and that is why engaging with the customer is the topmost factor. And the second viewpoint for the same is that the best way for an upcoming product to be engaged with a customer base is uh, having an incremental and regular release of the product. I would say. I mean, in a software terms, I could probably put it as a release, but having an incremental and a regular touch base or a regular experience point for the customer is very important. That's why probably anybody who is trying to build a product, I would probably say that are approaching an incremental way of MVP rather than waiting for a big bang, completely polished product to be released is something very important. We should be engaging the customer in the product building process, releasing it more often to them, have an active feedback channel from the consumer to improve the product, and then basically repeat the entire cycle. I think that is what the only thing which can help us to build the product faster and make it better for the user.
Makes a lot of sense, because even assuming you manage to get a good relationship, unless you can do things for them quickly, the relationship won't translate to. So I think it's important that you link that to your product cycles. Make sure you get the features that they're looking for as quickly as possible.
Right. I'd just like to add one example here, Ramesh. If you see, with this COVID-19 situation, pretty much most of our field operations are impacted, because of which we do not have RMs who are going back, are able to go to the retailers and all. The retailers are also worried about the dwindling footfall. So one request which we got as a feedback from most of these retailers was, okay, can we do something to connect with our customers? So it took us few days to probably roll out an feature through which their loyal set of consumers can actually place an online medicine order for them. You know what, like we were staying away from selling of medicines, but this is what one demand which came from the retailer himself. We could roll out the feature in 3 days, and every day we would get probably 10 or 8 to 10 important enhancement requests from the retailers. And over a period of 7 days, I would say, I think probably we have built a product which, if I were to build as a product manager, having 10 of my engineers sitting in the office, I would have taken at least 2 months to 3 months to build. But engaged the customer, who is my customer, because he got engaged with me, because he's actively giving me feedback, I had the necessity, I had the urgency to probably build it in a meaningful way in the last 7 days. So is the case of another application which we built for these retailers to enable doctor consultations for their patients. So I think these are the two things in the last 15 days which Pluspin rolled out, and we are seeing a lot of traction because the retailer himself is pushing these products to the consumers onto this space.
So
and that's one of the examples.
No better way to build a product than when your customer is asking you for it.
Exactly.
So you know that if this retailer wants, there are probably like 100 other retailers that need the same thing.
Exactly.
No, that's very good. I mean, I know I've been telling also, like, I've been looking at it. Yes, we are constrained a little in the lockdown, but there are opportunities. We just have to look out. No point worrying about things we can't do. There are many other things we can do.
Right. We should only worry about things which are under our control.
Exactly. But it brings itself with it some other opportunity. We just have to look around. I'm sure we'll find it.
True, true, true.
So good that you found something. And I think pharmacy is one very important aspect right now as we deal with the whole COVID situation.
Exactly, exactly.
Hang in the middle of it. So
Sure.
so continued. I hope you have continued success and you grow. And so all the best
Sure.
with the journey, and specifically right now in dealing with the COVID situation, and also the opportunities you are coming across. So,
Sure.
so Gopal, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
today.